Salut les amis, I'm your host, Alistair. So this is not a secret, but for those who are new here, I have decided to pursue an ex-tenant of mine who has done two things. Decided not to pay their rent for about 7 months, but in addition to that, damaged the property substantially to the tune of $20,000 all total. Now, originally I wasn't going to, but as life went by and I started to realize that, wait a minute, $20,000 is a lot of money. So I was like, nope, I'm going to try to get my monies back. But it's an update. Let's talk about it. She essentially filed for bankruptcy, but let me rewind to you a little bit some of the important preliminary steps that we took, my team and I took, in order to get to the point where she felt cornered enough to file for bankruptcy. In the tenancy application, I have access to your social security number. I have access to your bank statements, your bank account, because that's just part of the process that I require. I want your bank statements, I want your social, I want your pay stubs. I have a very clear information, really, a little bit about your life. And so I handed her document, I handed her file to my legal team. And with that, they were trying to locate her in order to serve her. And they came back and they still couldn't find her. And so they assumed that she was purposely staying low under the radar, not activating her social because she wanted not to be found and hoping that I would go away. And that's the mistake number one, is I don't go away when I'm annoyed. We waited. Now, we did have her work information, so they could have easily served her at work, because that's what I suggested. I said, go to her job. Can you serve her at a job? And I'm not the expert. And the lawyers was like, no, we're not going to serve her at work. It's better that you wait until she activates her social. It's just a matter of time. I didn't dispute it. They know more than me, and I said, okay, no problem. Eventually, she activated her social and looked for a place to rent. Now, I want to give you more of a context, because it's important for me to highlight the point that her not paying her rent was not due to financial hardship. Her choosing not to pay her rent was because she felt like she didn't have to, because it was during COVID, and she felt like, I don't have to pay my rent. That's how she felt. And so one day she just woke up and said, I'm not paying the rent because I don't have to. I was like, what? What? What's going on? What's happening? Yeah. And we had no legal remedy at the time to find a solution. So that's an important context to put out there, because the house that she rented was $1 million house. The rent was not $1 million. The rent was close to $3,000 and change, which is a lot more than my rent, because at the time I was renting to her for $1,450. And she did have a good job. She was making income. She was not making $3,000 ish a month income, but she was making an income. So I was like, oh, maybe she got there with a roommate, right? When we tried to go serve her, and we have footage of that, by the way. Unfortunately, I will not be able to show that to you for the simple reason is that my lawyer said no. Simple as that. I said, can I show that on YouTube? The lawyer's like, no, absolutely not. You cannot. So, but I can tell you how it went. The first time they tried to go serve her, she didn't answer the door, but she was there because her car was there, right? You do have the car information. The car was there. She didn't answer the door. Somebody else did. They tried a few times to serve her at that location, and she just didn't show up at the door. So she had an inclination that I was looking for her. Conclusion, the way she got served is at the gas station. She parked her car and pumped some gas, and the guy came over and, are you so-and-so? Yes, I have a package for you. Oh, really? And she took it, and then she threw a fit, blah, blah, blah. She cursed my name. She cursed me out. She called me a slumlord, that I had all the repairs that I never did. It's the same excuse. It's the same excuse that I've noticed that's being used, because newsflash for everybody who don't know, there's a system. If your landlord is a slumlord, it's called an escrow account system. You call the court and you pay your rent to the court. It doesn't exempt you from paying your rent. But anyway, she went through a big rant, blah, 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 blah. And that was step one of us going to court. So then we went to court, blah, 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 blah. The court system there are very tenant friendly. So they were like, well, let's give her as much time as she needs. And they gave her as much time as she needs. And eventually, essentially, it was getting to the point where I was going to get my, my monies, my wage garnishment, right? Because I wasn't playing with that. $20,000 is a lot of money. And that's my daughter's money. Now I want that back. But she saw that there was no avenue out. The wage garnishment was coming. And so she filed for bankruptcy. So the lawyer called us, gave us the update that she filed for bankruptcy, Chapter 7, I believe. And so the lawyer said, depending on how she filed, because then the court has to review. The lawyer was like, she has a job, she has an income, and she pays 3,000 X amount of rent. So I don't know how she's going to be granted Chapter 7 bankruptcy, right? But she did file. And because she filed, everything else is on pause. So the lawyer told me, we're on pause until we see what happens with the bankruptcy filing. And he said to me that he hopes that she didn't file correctly or that she gets denied. Because if she gets granted it, then, my quest ends and she gets away with it. However, let me explain to you why filing for bankruptcy is not a good idea. So this is from debt.org. Bankruptcy will affect your co-signers. So everybody who co-signed on any of your debt, the creditors will go after them. So usually it's mom and dad, brothers, sisters, it's family members. And if you're a friend of someone, never co-sign for anything. Do you understand me? Never co-sign for anything. Absolutely nothing. Because then you're just as liable if that person doesn't do the right thing. The next most important thing is credit damage. Now, listen, it would obliterate your credit. And if you don't know, your credit is literally everything, especially here in this country. Maybe you can get away with it in Europe. Maybe. But in the US, if you have bad credit score, you're going to pay interest off the wazoo. Life becomes that much more expensive. That's why when you're poor or when you have bad credit, life is hard because institutions, they want their monies first before you even eat. And that's what I always say. The person who makes the best decision for you is you. And the person who pays the consequences for your decisions is you. So you have to really be conscious of every decision you make because there are consequences. And the impact can go on to up to 10 years. So if you have, and even if you go from an 800 credit score, you file from bankruptcy to a credit score of like, 700, which is still a good credit score. The fact that there's bankruptcy on your record, nobody's going to lend you anything, any money without interest up the wazoo and without them making sure they get the most of their money back first. It's a complete nightmare. It's a complete nightmare. Another significant one is that your tax refund are going to be garnished. They're not yours anymore. You work with your accountant to do a strategy to make sure you keep as much of your money as possible at the end of the year. I don't know what a tax refund feels like anymore. And so if you're a person who relies on tax refund at the end of the year, bankruptcy, you have none of that anymore. You know what's interesting? They added here on this website, the social stigma. I don't understand why that's the problem because the only people who's going to know about your bankruptcy are, maybe your children, your husband, your wife. I don't see anybody else who will get to know your. There's no social stigma. I don't understand why is there social stigma. Anyway, my whole thing really, and the reason why I found this very comical in my particular situation is because she did this to herself. She woke up one morning and she felt like she didn't feel or need to pay her rent. And so she thought, because I'm a nice person, at least I talk to you very cordially and nice. What goes on in my head might be a different story. But she probably thought and assumed that because I smile a little bit too much, I maybe speak with an accent, I seem non-threatening, sure, that I'm a pushover. And so she felt like, oh, this landlord, he's not going to do anything to me. I'm not going to pay my rent. Yeah. Well, she thought wrong, and her consequences for her action is now she has to live with the fact that her life has just become exponentially more expensive. Anyway, look, for this quick final thought, what really baffles me is that the new landlord that she's renting from didn't call me. I'm her previous landlord. I got no phone call from someone inquiring on her behavior. She has an eviction on her record, but listen, the state actually wiped out. You can no longer look up the end result of the eviction. So in other words, you won't see eviction on the record. But what you'll see is, for example, is the end result before the eviction. So you'll see the writ of possession, but they don't show you evicted anymore. At least in the state the property is. You just see that a writ of repossession was given. So when you do like a automatic search, because the automatic search that most landlords do are looking for the word evicted. That's hidden. That's now hidden, right? You can look at it if you go manually, but automatic search, no, you cannot anymore, which is quite unfortunate because I assume this new landlord was relying on the automated system to search, and it looks like the state protected her again. So because I got no phone call from the new tenant, from the new landlord, and she's renting a nice place. So this is a property in a very upscale neighborhood, and I don't know what to say. It's just very unfortunate the landlord didn't do his due diligence. You know, one of the things in terms of being diligent is that you have to take the name of your potential renter and be curious. Be a detective. Look at the public records. Investigate. Look up where was her last, because she might not tell you. She might not tell you where who her last landlord was. But if you do a credit check, if you do that social security number ping, my address will show up. And so you look up that address. The owner of the property is an LLC, okay? And then you look at who owns the LLC. There's a way to contact me. It's not even that difficult. It's not even 30 minutes of work. It's a good 15 minutes, right? But that due diligence process, that new landlord didn't do it. And now she filed for bankruptcy. So she might be like, well, I don't feel like paying my rent. And in that case, the new landlord might have difficulty collecting. Yeah, because now if she's granted bankruptcy, because now the courts know that she's going through a hardship, and they're going to milk this for what they think that they're worth, so to speak. Anyway, that's the update I have. I think this is a dead end for me in terms of collecting my $20,000, but hopefully the bankruptcy gets denied, and then we'll move forward with wage garnishment because she has a job. She has a nice paying job. She makes $75,000 a year, at least at the time. So right now, maybe she makes more, but I wouldn't mind a couple hundred a month with interest until my $20,000 is paid back. Anyway, thanks. See you next time. Like and subscribe. I'm your host, Alistair.